So, Cipher just got her drip marketing today, and even though it's early, we already know quite a bit about her kit. And honestly, she might be one of the most interesting follow-up damage dealers we've seen in Star Rail. In this video, I want to break down everything we know so far, including how her mechanics work, who she might synergize with, and why she feels like a natural evolution of some previous Nihility designs, while still doing her own thing. Save up to 23% on the current banners at lootbar.gg. All you need is your UID and server. The link is in the description. Alright, starting with the basics. Cipher is a quantum unit on the path of Nihility, so right away that combo gets my attention. Nihility characters are usually all about debuffs and utility, but Cipher flips that a bit. She's more of a sub-DPS or follow-up attacker, and depending on how things scale, she could even slot in as a main DPS in certain teams. That flexibility is part of what makes her exciting. Her playstyle centers around follow-up attacks, debuffs, and this really cool mechanic tied to something called Wealth Bond. Basically, the idea is that she applies a special mark called Foretold to a target. And whenever that marked enemy takes damage from anyone, Cipher records some of that damage into Wealth Bond. Then, when she uses her ultimate, she unleashes quantum damage and follows it up with true damage based on the stored value from Wealth Bond. So it's kind of like you're building up a payoff with every hit, and then cashing it all in for a big burst. But there's more. If an enemy doesn't already have Foretold, her talent will automatically apply it at the start of any ally's turn, and it always goes to the enemy with the highest HP. And whenever an ally hits that Foretold enemy, Cipher deals a follow-up attack, which deals quantum damage based on her attack stat. These follow-ups keep happening until she uses her ultimate, which then resets the count and clears the Wealth Bond. This is why people are already comparing her to Topaz, since both characters are focused on follow-ups and quick burst rotations. But Cipher adds more layers, like this damage recording mechanic, and might end up being more flexible in terms of team comps, especially because her debuffs don't just help her, they boost team-wide damage output. For example, one of her traces lets her reduce all enemies' defense while she's on the field. That's a huge win for synergy, especially if you're running AoE-focused teammates. Another trace allows Wealth Bond to also record damage taken by enemies adjacent to the foretold target, not just the one marked. And one more increases the damage of her follow-up attacks and scales part of the Wealth Bond's effectiveness based on her crit rate, which makes building her even more interesting if you want to go full offense. Her technique is fun, too. When used in the Overworld, she enters stealth, moves faster, and auto-collects treasures. But what's cool is that when battle starts, she deals AoE damage to all enemies and stores a portion of that damage in Wealth Bond immediately, so you're already setting up her payoff before turn 1 even starts. Now, if you're wondering about her light cone, it's designed to boost her crit rate, and it also reduces the defense of enemies hit by her skill. If the skill crits, the defense reduction gets even stronger. We don't know the exact numbers yet, but the synergy there is clear. It pushes her toward a crit-focused build that helps both her follow-up damage and her burst scaling from the stored Wealth Bond. What I really like about Cipher is how she blends debuffs and DPS without being too rigid. She doesn't rely on strict DOT setups like Kafka, and she doesn't need a specific follow-up companion like Topaz with Numby. Instead, she fits into a lot of existing quantum or follow-up comps, and could even bring a fresh layer of AoE burst to Nihility teams, which normally focus more on sustained debuff pressure. That said, there are still a lot of unknowns, like how much damage her recorded Wealth Bond can actually do in practice, how fast she generates energy for her ultimate, and how well her scaling holds up without Eidolons or signature gear. But from what we know so far, she's shaping up to be one of the most versatile and innovative sub-DPS units we've seen in the Quantum lineup. So what do you think? Are you planning to pull for Cipher, or are you still saving for someone else? Let me know what kind of teams you'd build her in. Save up to 23% on the current banners at lootbar.gg. All you need is your UID and server. The link is in the description.